What's up, everyone? My name is ZayNews, and this is the ZayNews Podcast. I'm not going to lie to you guys, it has been a while since we filmed a podcast. We've been pushing out a ton of content, short form, long form, on YouTube, on TikTok, etc. But I haven't sat down to do a podcast in a while because there's just been so much stuff happening. But because the high school and the college basketball season are winding down very rapidly, I wanted to make sure I got some stuff to you guys that I feel like is important for any high school or college basketball player whose season is coming to a close, and some mindset shifts that you can make going into your season, how you can be prepared going into your off season so that you can make the most of it and coming to the following season better off for it. So that's really what today is going to be about. As always, if you guys like the content, make sure to like, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend, leave a comment, tell me if I'm tripping in the comments, tell me if I'm on point, ask questions in the comments, let me know if you need some advice. I'm always happy to share and collaborate with you guys in the comments, and it just makes for a better community. It makes these videos really seem like they're hitting home and they're doing what their intention is, which is to help young basketball players just get better at their craft. So without further ado, let's get into it. And no going to be no NBA talk today. This is really just about youth hoops. It's really about guys who are continuing to progress in their craft and trying to get better at basketball and try to make the most of their high school and college career so they can take basketball as far as what they can take it. And specifically, who I want to talk to today are the players whose seasons are winding down and they are feeling in this present moment that they didn't make the most of their seasons, or their season didn't go the way that they had anticipated. They didn't play as much as they had hoped for. Um, Maybe their relationship with coach isn't in the best place right now. Maybe they feel like they did all this work and it was all for nothing. Maybe it feels like they don't know what direction they need to go into to maximize the player that they want to be, or how to get to become the player that they want to be. And there's just some small advice that I can give you, that I want to give you. And for starters, let's talk about how do we want to go about this? Let's talk about how you can get on the court more, what you can do in the off season, how you can shift your mindset when you are playing to make sure that you can get on the court as much as possible. And once you are able to get on the court, it's only a matter of time before everything else comes, right? Because when you're on the court, you need to be a threat offensively. You need to be able to knock down shots, and shots will come, right? And opportunity will come. But first, you have to do the things necessary to get yourself on the court. And people, you know, um, the old heads in the basketball space, like myself now, I guess I'm an old head. I'm 30. To a lot of youngsters, that's an old head. Um, we'll preach things like do the little things, right? Get on the floor, hustle, play with effort. Play defense is probably the biggest one that young players hear. But we will tell people that without any direction, how to become a good defender. What does being a good defender look like? What does hustling look like? So, you could say these broad things, but if you don't give a direct path on how to get there for young players, it's very hard to be receptive to that and know how to incorporate that into your game. So, let me tell you what I did, right? I want to tell you from experience what I did to make myself a commodity on any team, any court that I played on, right? As a guy who wasn't the most athletic player, was never the most talented player. Now, when I say I wasn't the most talented, it doesn't mean that I won't bust, trust me, right? But it means that basketball didn't naturally come to me the same way that it did for other people, right? I had to work um, very hard to become the player that I was. And I feel like I was a very skilled player. I was a very high IQ player, but just not a lot of the raw talent and abilities that some other guys have. And I had to find ways to bridge the gap, to get on the court, to show that I could make myself effective and, neutralize some of those maybe athletic gifts and advantages that other guys had over me. So I think I'm a good person to take advice like this from because of that, right? And in saying that, I was, especially later into my high school career and throughout my college career, the best or one of the best defenders on every team that I played on. And I kid you not, that started from my freshman year of college on, when it comes to like when I can really point to the evidence, right? And when I'm talking about play defense to get on the court, let me tell you what that looks like practically. For me, because I didn't have all the most athletic gifts, right, that I just talked about, I was very, very what's the word I'm thinking of? Stubborn. I had to do the little things very well, right? And I had to be very rigid in that sense. So getting down in the stance, was not an option for me. I had to do it. Um, you know, Boxing out was something that I had to do. That was why I was a really good rebounder. And when I'm guarding guys, one thing that I'm always thinking of is the time of the game. Because I was a good defender, I was typically assigned with the best player on the opposing team. And if it wasn't the best player, it was the best like wing, right? So a guy who could be anywhere from like 6'4" to 6'8" is typically the range of players that I guarded. And if that was the best player on your team, then that's who I was typically guarding. And one thing I really tried to do, and this is where the practical advice comes in, is that I knew at the high school and college level, if I could make that player miss on his first 2 to 3 attempts, then likely I was going to take him out the game for the rest of the game. So sometimes when you think about defense can be a very daunting thing because it's 40 minutes in a high school or in a college setting, 32 minutes in a college game, and you're thinking of the game in terms of the entire game. But what you have to realize in a high school and college setting is very few coaches are going to continue to feed, even if it's their best player, they're going to continue to feed a guy if they are not having a lot of success early on, right? If you see a guy, missing some shots, putting himself in tough positions right out the gate, maybe just playing out of what his normal comfort zone is, then coaches are at that level are very quick to go in a different direction. And that's because at these levels, there's typically more, continuity in offense. It's more spread the love. Um, it's not so much, we're going to isolate this guy and just go, 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 right? Very few teams, I'd say, at these levels play that style of basketball. There are a few, right? And there's situations where it's tough. But for the most part, if you as a defender can make it very hard on the player that you're guarding initially, their touches, their production is going to greatly decrease over the course of the game. So for me, I was always locked in right out the gate because I knew if I could slow that guy down initially, make his touches uncomfortable, um, you know, maybe make him force a bad shot, force a bad turnover, miss some things, then he's not going to get another touch for a while, right? And even more so if it's a team who really dedicated a lot of their offense to one guy. If I can make a guy miss 3 shots in a row, they're going to have to do something else, right? I'm telling you, very few coaches at that level have enough trust in a guy to continue to call plays for him once they see them struggling right out the gate. So for me, being the solid defender that I was, being someone who was very disciplined in their defense, I knew that. So coming out the gate, I was always physical. I always knew where my man was, and I was always working hard to give them no easy opportunities early, right? So I'm in a stance, I'm contesting. These guys are still trying to get a feel for the game. They're not quite warmed up. They're not quite ingratiated fully into the game in terms of, how this thing is going to play out, right? Because each game has a new rhythm, each game has a new feel, and you got to maneuver through that as a player and find your opportunities for success, right? And while you're doing that, I'm making it extremely hard on you right out the gate. So if there's one tip in terms of how to practically be a good defender, I would say for young guys who are trying to get on the court, if you can slow your man down early in a game, then that is going to make it so much easier on you later, right? If you can really lock in and slow them down. Now, again, I brought this up. There are going to be moments and there are going to be teams and coaches who don't get swayed by that, right? And that is when you need to add more layers to your game, right? The teams who are going to force feed their best player no matter what their shot attempts are looking like, no matter what their misses are looking like, no matter what their makes are looking like, no matter how rough of a game they're having, right? This is our money man. He's the guy who takes us to the promised land, and he's going to be the one to pull us out of it, for lack of a better term. And in those scenarios, right, it can be tough. But with that being said, 99% of the time, that's not the case. Not the case at this level, right? We're not in the NBA where guys, where these offensive fixtures are, getting 25 shots a game no matter what, right? It's a little bit different, right? If you see good players at the college and high school level, a good player one game may have 8 shots, the next game they may have 18 shots, right? And it just depends on the flow of the game and who's guarding them and opportunities that they have. And I'm telling you right now, coaches are much more likely to pull the plug or go in a different direction or play a different brand of basketball if it feels like that guy isn't producing at the level that they're accustomed to seeing him produce at. So if there's one tip I can give you, really want to just hammer this home. Do your work early on the defensive end of the floor. If you lock in while said guy that you're guarding is still trying to work himself into the game and you get some stops early, that is going to make your path to being, to defending later so much easier. And not to mention, if you're able to put them in positions, and this is adding layers onto the defense, this is as you grow as a defender and start to see tendencies, see where guys struggle. If you're able to put these guys in uncomfortable positions, then they personally are going to be more timid as well. If you see a guy, and it's amazing to me how many players can't pick up on these sorts of reads, but if you see a guy who's not as comfortable going left, and you force him left into a pull-up jumper, this kind of awkward form, right? That's going to stick in his mind. That's going to stick in his mind, her mind, and as you go throughout the game, right, they're going to remember these things, and they're going to be less likely to put themselves in that position again because they don't want to fail, right? A lot of guys are scared of failure. A lot of basketball players are scared of failure. In that sense, and they're scared of messing up. They're scared of making mistakes. So you capitalize on these ideas, right? You capitalize on these mindsets. You play solid defense out the gate, right? You don't give them anything, right? If you know what tendencies they have, whether they're weak going left, whether they're weak going right, whether they don't like to shoot the mid range or they don't like to shoot jumpers, so you're playing off of them a little bit. Whether they love to shoot, so you're pressing up into them and trying to make them a driver. Whatever that tendency is that you pick up on out the gate, whether it's through scouting reports, whether it's through you just watching them and kind of knowing them because you've played them a couple times, right? Take those tendencies, use it against them right out the gate. A lot of people, again, when they're still trying to get a feel for the game, and you're playing with that level of intensity, that level of defense, that level of being locked in, it's going to be tough for them to succeed. And then if you play to their bad tendencies and you put them in a few tough positions right out the gate, the rest of the game is going to be so much easier on you. So I said all that to say this was a long-winded way of me saying, do your work early, right? Do your work early, be in a stance, be in the right position, close out possessions by getting those rebounds and the plays. Don't give those guys any second chance opportunities. And typically, the odds are you will have a lot of success and you will be able to play yourself onto the court more if you could just be a really solid defender who does the right things in that situation. Now, piggybacking off of that, let's talk more about the nuances of defense and how to be a good defender. First and foremost, be disciplined, like I said earlier. So anytime your man is on the catch, let's start here actually. Be disciplined and be engaged, right? So you have to be focused on the defensive end of the floor. You can't let your mind wander, right? So first and foremost, anytime your man has a ball, you're down in the stance, you're being competitive. Now you have to play to your abilities. So if you're playing against somebody quicker than you, give them a half step. If you're playing against somebody slower than you, press up on them a little bit more. This is basic basketball. If you're playing against a really good shooter, maybe you press bottom a little bit more, right? Like you dictate what you feel comfortable with based on your abilities. I will leave that up to you. But for starters, you got to be disciplined. You got to be engaged. So you have to know where your man's at all times, and you have to know where the ball is at all times. A lot of players think that defense stops when they get off the ball, when their man gets off the ball. That cannot be further from the truth. If you want to be a great defender, but you lack some of the physical gifts that some of these other guys you're seeing on TV have, where they can close gaps quickly, where they can, make up and recover in spots where normal people may not be able to, then you have to stay disciplined and you have to be in the right position no matter what. This is where drills like shell drill, I know a lot of basketball players hate shell drill, are so important because they just hammer home where you're supposed to be at. in defensive continuity and defensive schemes, right? So if you're off the ball, if you're, on the baseline and the ball is an opposite baseline, you need to have at least 1 foot in the paint. You need to be able to see your man and the ball out of your peripherals, and then adjust from there, right? And depending on where you're at on the floor, in correlation with the basketball, you need to make sure that you're really good at positioning. If you are really good at positioning, it's going to make you getting back to your man easier. It's going to make you being in help side defense better. It's going to make sure that you can rely on help side defense better so that you're less likely to get beat, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you can just always make sure that you're one of those steady pieces on defense that's going to help your team have success on the defensive end of the floor. Not to mention, if you're trying to be a great on-ball defender, knowing where help is behind you makes it so much easier, right? If you know how to play a guy to where you have help, it takes away a lot of their opportunities, right? So if you're a team that forces guys middle because you know that's where your help is, um, then you want to play to that advantage. If you got a guy on the wing and you know driving baseline is going to lead him right into your 6'6" center, 6'8" center, however tall they are, depending on what level you're playing on, right? Um, then you want to shade them into that center and allow your team on the back line to recover and to rotate out of that, right? Having the knowledge and the basketball IQ to know where your team is at behind you and also know where you're supposed to be at when you're off the ball makes defense so much easier. So discipline in knowing where you're supposed to be at on the court, effort in making sure that you are maxing out and putting yourself in position to be successful will usually lead to a lot of success on the defensive end of the floor. So um, tangibly, when you're playing pickup this summer, when you're doing drills this summer, when you're playing ones this summer, I want you to really begin to lean into these sorts of things, right? If you're playing ones, don't just play one-on-one defense, right? But maybe play with the mindset of, this is where my help would be on the back line if I were to play, and try to stop guys out of that. Now, obviously, you can't just let a guy go by you, so you have to be more strategic, but you still want to be able to guard guys with basketball principles in mind, so this stuff can translate once you get into the season. If you're playing 5-on-5, if you're playing pickup, one of my favorite things to do, right, not only for your conditioning but also just to help you move them puppies a little bit better, is to pick up guys full court. Nobody wants to get picked up full court in ones, but I tell you what, if you want to stay in really good shape over the summer and you also want to become a better defender, um, start picking up guys full court, especially if you know there's a guy out there that's better than you, right? Don't just pick on guys who aren't as good as you, because the reality is what this will also do, especially for you as an individual defender, you're going to realize very quickly that pickup basketball does not have the same level of competence, the same level of structure, obviously, um, as you will during your season. And what that means is if you get beat, you're usually toast, right? So it's going to force you to play smarter, more strategic defense, so you aren't getting beat. But picking up full court usually leaves you disposed to getting beat easier, right? So you have to find ways to make up for that and play defense strategically. So these are all ways that you can really begin to work on your defense and improve on your defense. But people undervalue how important your basketball IQ is on the defensive end of the floor if you want to be a great defender. And I want you to understand that if you want to be a great defender, being a thinker goes a long way. And this is why knowing where your help side defense is, if you are the on ball guy, is so important. This is why knowing where you're supposed to be at when you're off the ball is so important. And once you know where everybody is supposed to be at, you can start to direct traffic. You can start to tell guys where they need to be at. You can start to recover for guys when they get out of position. And it just makes you an invaluable piece to a team's success if you can be that level of defender. Communication is another big one that we could talk about. If you're a bad communicator, you're never going to be a good defender. So one thing you can do in pickup is really start to emphasize communication, over emphasize communication. People hate me, but in pickup I talk just because it's been so instilled in me from playing basketball for so many years, right? Stuff like this matters so much, and it tends to get it doesn't get stressed enough all the time, and young players don't fully understand how valuable it is. But when you watch, even let's say, a lot of young players don't watch high school and college basketball because they're playing it. But if you go look at the highest level of basketball, right, the one player I can think about because I watch a lot of Lakers basketball is Dalton Connect. Dalton Connect was a 23 points per game scorer, I think, in college at the University of Texas. He was a lottery pick in 2024. And he essentially this season has worked himself in a place where like he's unplayable for the Lakers. Part of it, I think, is coaching, but also I think his development as a defender has just not been good. And he's at 23, 24 years old, he doesn't have some of those fundamental skills as a defender that allow him to play on the court. He's a great athlete. If you give him a lane, he's liable to dunk on you. He can shoot the ball really well. He has a lot of skills, but he lacks a strong defensive IQ to where he just can't play on the court, and his offense isn't good enough to justify him playing meaningful minutes because his defense is just that much of a negative for the Lakers, right? And this isn't saying he can't grow. I think he will grow. I think he will get better, and I think, and honestly, he needs to find a new opportunity. This isn't to knock on anybody or anything like that, but it's just to give you guys some insight, right? This happens at every level. When you're green, when you don't have a ton of experience, when you're still learning how to defend at the level at which you're playing at, it can be hard, and it takes time to learn how to make these reads and understand it, and for the game to slow down for you. But playing hard and picking up guys full court to help yourself stay in shape, but also to learn how you're not super reliant on your help side defense, and you can hold your own as a defender for the most part, is going to be huge for you. When you're in ones, learn how to guard guys with your team's defensive principles at mind, so you can at least begin to adjust your defensive play style around some of those intricacies that you have on your team philosophies, so you can have a lot of success, right? If you can begin to think the game like this, it's going to go a long way. So without getting too long-winded, just to recap for you guys, where I would start as a defender, if you're at the high school level, if you're at the college level, is to do your work early. Slow guys down early by being a disciplined defender, by knowing some of the player you're defending, knowing some of their tendencies and using that against them. And I promise you, if you can do that and if you can get a few stops early, it's going to create a snowball effect where they're going to start to doubt themselves. You're going to start to grow in confidence, and before you know it, they shot 3 for 12 as opposed to 6 for 12 as they normally do. They were 30% from the field as opposed to 50% from the field. Their effectiveness was lower, and you just made a supremely large impact on your team's chances of winning because you did your work early. So as a defender, as somebody who's trying to get on the court, do your work early. If you can slow a guy down, a player down, a woman down out of the gate, it's going to lead to a much easier path later on down the road. How to be a good defender, right? You need to be disciplined and you need to give effort. You need to be disciplined in being in the right position on the court. Regardless of if you are guarding the ball, you're positioning there to being off the ball and where the ball is in relation to where you are out on the floor. Your positioning will make being a good defender so much easier. If you are in a good position, it's easier to close out on the skip pass. It's easier for you to get over and help if you need to get into the key and contest a shot. It's easier for you to recover to things. It's easier for you to get rebounds. Everything becomes easier. It's easier for you to be in the pocket and get steals. If they start throwing lazy passes, everything becomes easier if your position is where it needs to be. So be disciplined, have an IQ, give maximum effort, and if you can do all these things, you're going to have a lot of success. The way to work on this in the off season, when you are playing pick up guys full court, really challenge yourself to move your feet. It's going to force you to move better laterally. It's going to force you to be more efficient with your energy. It's going to force you to be in excellent condition. And if you're in excellent condition, usually you can play really good defense for longer stints. All of those are recipes for success. So in your off season, when you're doing this off season, when you're playing pick up guys full court, when you were doing more live drills, when you're playing ones after a session, whatever the case may be, play defense with your team concept in mind. If you are on a team that likes to force baseline, give guys baseline when you're playing on the wing and figure out how to recover out of that. If you're a team that likes to force guys into gaps and play more towards the middle of the court, force guys into gaps, and know in your mind that when I'm playing, there's going to be help here. Still do your best to recover, not get beat, all that sort of stuff. But know in your mind when this next season comes up, this is, where my help defense is going to be. And even though he got a shot off here in a real game, he's not going to be able to get that off because I'm going to have that backline help right there with me. So start thinking about the game from that perspective, and it's really going to open up some doors for you. I promise you, if you can be a disciplined defender that gives effort and knows that they are going to be in the right position every time, that is an invaluable skill to a coach. And once they see that on the court, once they see you making plays out of your defensive positioning, that is going to increase your likelihood to get on the court so much more, right? And then the offensive stuff will come, and we'll talk more about the offensive stuff later on, but the offensive stuff will come. The shooting will come because the more you're on the court, the more opportunities you're going to have on offense. That's just the reality of it. Even if you're not the best offensive player on the team, if you are on the court for extended stretches of time because you're such a good defender, offensive rebounds are going to come. Backdoor cuts are going to come. Your best player may draw two, kick it out to you for a three, right? When you're on the court, you just have to be ready. And your offensive skill set is going to get worked on, right? We know when you go to the gym, offense is what is prioritized always. So continue to work on your offense, continue to touch on those skills. And I will talk through over the course of this series while we're coming out of the season. I'll probably continue to talk about, how to make the most of your off season over the next 6 to 8 weeks, while it's still early, right? While we're still in like February, March, April, so that you can take all that information and, May, June, July, August, September, October until the season starts, you have 5, 6 months where you can really lock in and work on all of these things. So that's what the next 2, 3 months are looking like. And then we'll take the off season to really work on the games. Let me know if you have questions. Let me know where I'm wrong. Let me know if you thought I was really spot on with my analysis. And let's work. Let's work so you can get on the court next year and you can really make the most of your time and you could become the basketball player that you want to be, right? Be disciplined, have intention to your workouts this summer, this off season. Really be mindful of the areas where you need to grow. You know it, whether you want to be truthful with yourself or not. You know it. You know that defensively you tend to get lost and you start to ball watch, and before you know it, there's a skip pass over your head for an open three. You know, if you get put in a pick, you lose where your man's at. You're unsure what to talk, what communication to be had. All this stuff happens to every basketball player ever. And the way you get through it is just to do more reps. The way you get through it is for the more you get comfortable in these spaces, the more you understand your positioning and where you need to be at, how you communicate through these things. Your awareness just grows and grows and grows, and you can really start to be super effective and just know where you're supposed to be at all times and make the most of the game. So I'm excited for you guys because this is a great opportunity to get better. If you love the game, there is no better time than now to get better. Your season's coming to a close, right? Whether you make the playoffs, whether you don't. And the work can start now. If you're not working through the season anyways, you're already at a disadvantage. So the work starts now. Start getting those shots up. Start working on the ball handling. Start thinking about defense differently. Start being very mindful of what you're doing on the defensive end of the court. And it's going to open a lot of doors for you. I'm telling you, trust me. But I appreciate you guys listening as always. Uh, Make sure to like, subscribe, tell a friend and tell a friend. Leave a comment in the comments. Let me know if I'm tripping. Let me know where you agree with me. Let me know if you have any questions, and we can really begin to expand on this concept of doing your work early and slowing guys down that way. We can talk about being in the right defensive positioning, what that looks like for you and your team and your continuity and your concepts, and we can just get better at this stuff. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. If you need anything, give me a shout. It's Zaybo with the ZayNews Podcast. We'll talk soon. Peace.